All right, welcome. Let's get right into the good stuff. At the beginning of Sheets, it's important to establish the different column types. Our agenda is going to start by defining each of the column types, and then we're going to do a little practice, some exam preparation. So the first and the most commonly used is text/number. You can make a column this by default. As soon as you open a brand new sheet, I think you have 5 columns, maybe 6, and they'll all be text/number. Self-explanatory, it allows text and numbers. Next up is a contact list. A contact list is required if you're going to set up notifications or reminders. Automation, you want somebody to be automatically notified 3 days in advance, let's say, of some due date. You're going to need a contact list against which to send those reminders. It can be set to multiple users, so you can have multiple people, and it can be restricted to just the people that you put in there. So if you want a column dedicated to, let's say, project managers and a column dedicated to project owners, something like that, you can have different people on those different lists. Next up is the date column. It's required for any date-based function like calendar view, Gantt view, or if you want date-based formulas. Say, for example, you want a formula that's always going to show today's date. You would say equals today, parenthesis, close parenthesis. That formula will only work in a date column. Next up is drop downs. You have single and multiple select. I most commonly use these for statuses. You want to say at risk or healthy, or if you want to say in progress, not started, complete, something like that. You list your values here, and you can either have single or multiple select. They can only be text or number values, although you can, if you wanted to, put a date in there. Smartsheet doesn't care about your syntax, but do understand if you write a date, like say 3/12/22, that won't be looked at as a date in Smartsheet's formulas. Nonetheless, this can be restricted to just those drop-down values so that users cannot put anything else. And again, with single or multi-select, meaning you can check off multiple options or just a single. All right, checkboxes. If you have a checkbox column, it's very important to remember that when you use a formula in that column, you use a 1 to represent checked and equals 0 if you want it unchecked. For example, I've got one written here. If you had another column that was a status column, and let's say it was a drop down like we just discussed, the statuses were, not started, in progress, and complete. And next to it you had a checkbox column that said complete, and you just wanted a check mark if it was done. You could have your checkbox column automatically check off if the status column was complete with this formula right here. Equals if status equals complete, this 1 would represent the true value, meaning if this is true, a 1, if it's false, a 0. This would result in a checked box if the status was complete. Again, this can be restricted to checkbox use only or not. It's up to you. You just check this little box right here. All right, symbols. There is a whole slew of symbols, like the ones you see here are flag, unflag, starred. There's traffic light, green, yellow, red. Sometimes formulas can be used. I know for a fact they can be used on binary examples, like if the flag is raised or not, if the star is starred or not. It's the same thing as holds with a checkbox formula. You use 1s or 0s. Keyboard shortcuts exist. For example, you can also do this for G for green, R for red, Y for yellow in the traffic light example. You can also do that with a formula. And this can also be restricted to symbols only so that people don't put things in there other than just the symbols that you want. Lastly, auto number / system generated columns. Very powerful tool, some important keys here. This will do these things. So you can have it auto numbered, and you can even set up your own prefix, the fill numbers, like if you want 4 or 5 digits, a suffix, what number do you want it to start at. This is really good for, it's just an auto-generated number that will never be duplicated. You can always trust Smartsheet to assign a unique number to each row. Modified date, so that you can always see when was this row last changed. Modified by, who made the change. Created by, or created on, the date that it was created. So very powerful tool when it comes to form submissions. If you ever build a form, I highly suggest going in there and throwing an auto number system created date column so you can see when that submission occurred. And then who is it created by? If they're a user logged in, you can see who created this row. Can't use formulas in these, self-explanatory, it's automatic, it's system generated, not by you, but by Smartsheet. Auto number has expanded options, we talked about that, that's down here. And it cannot be modified, these are system generated. If you ever wanted to change it, the only thing you can do is delete that column. Alright, now let's get into some practice. I'm going to hide my face here. So, what you're going to do is go in and access the sheet that we already created, which was the certification exam prep sheet. And you're going to change all of the columns, starting with the second one. The first one is your primary column. I know it's not written here, but just go ahead and change that to task. It will always say primary when you first get started. And then your second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth columns do as follows. Name them accordingly. Make them these types of columns. And this is just to explain what they're going to be used for. And then continue on down here with these instructions. Hide the duration column. Add a system-generated column before the task column, which we're going to name the primary column, the task column, to display the date each row was modified. Unhide the duration column and move it immediately to the left of the start column. And then merge the owner and status columns. I'm sorry for that. This is a trick question. You cannot do number 6. But it's very good to know, because if you've ever started using Smartsheet and found yourself wanting to merge columns, you probably inevitably ended up frustrated because you can't. If you want to try this on your own, pause here, and then I will show the rest of you how to do this. So let's switch screens to Smartsheet. Alright, so I've got my Smartsheet up. Let's go ahead and get started. The first one is the primary column. You cannot change this column. It will always be a text or number. But we're going to call this task. Press enter. All I'm going to do is double click on these, and I'm going to change them according to my table. Sorry for the small font. We're going to make this a start, and it's a date column. Say OK. We're going to go to end. Date column, I didn't say to, but you could restrict these to date only, but I'm just going to do what it says over here. Next up is going to be duration. This is a text or number. Duration, number of days, number of hours, whatever you want it to be, is a number. It's not recognized as a date, just FYI. Owner is a contact list, and we're going to leave it at that. We're going to go to column 6, and we're going to say status. It is a drop down, single select, and then I gave you the options over here as not started, in progress, on time, in progress, behind, complete. It does say to restrict to these drop-down values. I'm going to say OK. Alright, so there's the table done. Hide the duration column. The way to do that is you right-click on the column that you wish to hide, scroll down to hide. Done. Add a system-generated column before the task column. So we're going to go over to here. There's 2 ways to do this. You'll see the little insert a column icon here. You can left-click on that, or I prefer to right-click on the column header, and then you have the option of putting it on the right or left. I just prefer it that way. And it says add it to before, so to the left of the task column. And this is going to be a system-generated column to display the row or the date each one was modified. So that's this column type. Next up, unhide the duration column. The only way to unhide anything in Smartsheet, you can't unhide them one at a time. You have to right-click anywhere on any of these column headers, and we're going to go to unhide all columns, and that's the only way to unhide them. You can't do it one at a time. Merge the owner and status columns. That was sort of cruel of me, but just so you know, you cannot do that. So that's it. I will see you in the next lesson.